The rest of us. Oh,
In progress.
cool. So,
Great, thanks, Jonathan.
now the recording started. We better start. So, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming. This is an essential meeting to be at, because it's our safeguarding meeting, and without it, we're liable. We need this to be part of our meeting. So thank you very much. Our training. Thank you very much for coming. Just as I begin, I thought I'd read a couple of verses from Ephesians 3. So if you have a Bible, feel free to turn to it. I'm going to start reading from verse 14. So yeah, load it up on your phones if you want to, or grab a Bible. So Ephesians 3, verse 14. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. And obviously we're here to talk about kids work. We're gathered as leaders of kids, of all age group kids, actually, all the way from 0, where you're babies, to Y Connect and the teenagers. And I guess this is kind of our hope and prayer, not just for us as leaders, but also for the kids in our groups, for the babies, kids, teenagers, that they may know how wide, long, high and deep the love of Christ is for them, that it really impact them. They'll be rooted and established in that love, and of course we want that not just for them, but also for the whole church family, and right at the end it says for all generations, forever and ever. So they're not excluded, they're really important, they're part of the church family, and we want to make sure that we're teaching them the gospel and sharing God's love. And I should have brought it up, because it's been such a long time since I remember recounting it, but we have a vision in kids ministry, and that is to point every kid to Jesus so they know and love him all their life. I think I've got that right. That's from memory, but that's kind of it, isn't it? These verses really kind of encompass that prayer that Paul has for the people he's writing to, that they might know and love Jesus, and that's what we want our kids to do as well. So the format of tonight is basically, I'm going to hand over to Rebecca in a minute. She's going to help us with our safeguarding training, and then after that, we're going to have breakout into groups where we can talk we can get to know each other a little bit, talk about sort of maybe some details of how our specific age group might work, and then also to pray, and we'll be all done and dusted by 9:15. So Emma, do you mind praying? And then we'll hand over to Rebecca.
Father God, thank you so much with entrusting all of us with teaching kids about Jesus, for making the groups fun, and for loving and building our church up in this way. And we just pray that this evening would be a real refreshing time for us, that we would learn how to really protect our children at church, and also to make sure we're safe. Help us to do that well, and help us to listen well this evening. Amen.
Amen. And with that, over to Rebecca.
Great, thank you. So I guess just to introduce myself, because looking through, I don't know everybody on the screen, so some of you might not know me. So I'm Rebecca Macaulay. Go to Christ Church, obviously, and I have been the safeguarding officer for the last few years at Christ Church, along with Chris Gregory and Anna Stilton. I am taking a break, stopping for a year, but thought I'll just be nice and do this one last thing as a favour to Jonathan and Emma. So the safeguarding officers from this point onwards will be Chris Gregory. I don't know if Chris is here or not. Catherine Horton and Jack Popperwell. So you'll need that information just because as I talk through things, I'll be talking about the safeguarding officers and those are the 3 people that they are. So I'm sure that Jonathan or Emma will send through their contact details at some point just so that you've got them. So a lot of you probably are feeling a bit frustrated that it's a Thursday evening, it's hot and you're at safeguarding training, which is often not anybody's favourite thing. But it is obviously very important and it's something that I am very keen that we do really well at Christchurch. And why am I keen on that? Well, obviously it's in the name. We want to safeguard, we want to make sure that our children and teenagers at church are safe. We want to make sure that we create an environment where they can come and enjoy being kids, being children, having fun, seeing their friends in a way that is safe and allows them to learn about Jesus, to think about what the Bible says, to learn the lessons that we're teaching them in all the sessions, where in an environment that is safe for them. Because we all know that if you feel scared or uneasy or unhappy, you're less likely to learn. And also because it's part of being a Christian, we want to love and serve those in our church family, and the children are very much a part of our church family. The other thing to say is that if a church is doing what it should be doing in teaching the gospel, sharing the Bible, worshipping Christ, then it's not a safe place for all children to be, because everybody is welcome. And that means that people from all backgrounds, no matter what they've done or where they've been in the past, can come and be forgiven and join us in worshipping Christ. Now, that is fantastic. And one of the, it's something that we should just praise God for. But it does make children's work that slightly more complicated or risky, because those most vulnerable children, the most vulnerable people in our church, the children, are at risk from the very thing that we want church to be, which is welcoming to anybody and everybody that wants to come. So it's really important that we do safeguarding training and we think about how best to keep kids safe so that we can protect everybody, not everybody that walks through the door, regardless of their age or background. Now it's going to be slightly tricky because, as Jonathan said, we're looking at babies, tots, mini kids and kids and Y Connect, which means that we are looking at ages 0 to 17, and 0 to 17 covers a whole breadth of different needs of children, different, they're all at different developmental stages, they all need different help and whatever else in the sessions you'll be with them. So through this next bit of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to ask some questions and people from the different age groups. So if you're from babies, I might ask babies leaders some questions, mini kids, etc. But everybody listening, because one of the things as children's leaders is you might be asked to come and just help out in another group if we have a need, so it is good to know from everybody from what the different rules are in each session. So just some really practical stuff. First of all, so there are ratios for every single children's group in church. That is the amount of adults that are needed for children in the room. So in babies, there should be 1 adult for every 3 children. So if I get this wrong, someone just shout and tell me the right thing as well. So babies, 1 adult to every 3. Tots is 1 adult to every 4 toddlers. Mini kids and kids is 1 adult to every 8 children. And Y Connect is 1 adult to every 10 children.
That's actually changed, Rebecca.
Oh, it's changed. Go on.
And I can't remember the cutoff, but I think it's roughly mini kids is 1 to 6. And then,
okay, so mini kids then. Okay, so mini kids is 1 to 6 1 adult to every 6 children, and then kids, is that still 1 to 8?
Yeah.
Okay, fab. So so those are the ratios you must make sure in the sessions. If you feel like flipping heck, I've got so many kids in here, this is crazy, just do a quick count up of how many kids there are and how many leaders, and then that's when, as children's leaders, we all just need to be willing, if there's loads of kids on a Sunday, is you might need to run down and just double check who can we need to double check if someone else can come in. In terms of, are we specifying more than is legally required, I think we're erring on the side of caution. So I think it is, more, we're more cautious than legally required, but I'm not 100% sure. The other thing is that we will always ask you as children's leaders to do a DBS check. You must do that you can't participate as children's leaders if you have not done your DBS check, and there aren't dispensations on that. So when you get an email asking you to renew it, please just get on and do it, because it puts a massive strain on the children's work if you don't, and you will always be given lots of warning on how to do that and when to do it. So if you are students on the children's team, just knowing like you'll have documents in different places, just try and predict when your renewal is coming up. It's normally once every 3 years, and just try and make sure you've got those documents. The DBS is a legal requirement, and is something where it just gives parents and carers a real reassurance that we've got everything needed.
Rebecca, can I just interrupt as well? I think Gaynor is quite keen for people, once you're on the Christchurch system, to do the updating, to log, once you've got your DBS through Christchurch, to then go on the updating service. She'll send you the link to stuff, and then it automatically will renew.
There is an updating service for the DBS, but Gaynor generally was, when she emails to ask you to do the DBS either for the first time or update it, she'll give you the kind of details of how to join the updating service, which just means we don't have to get all the documents every single time, and it's just quite helpful. The other things, just on the like kind of practical stuff before we dive into a few other things. So the children's work, we don't allow, if you're not a children's leader, we generally don't allow other adults into the rooms. So the parents take the children, but they generally stand outside of the rooms. The exception to that is probably babies, just because if you've got hundreds of babies that need to be picked up. But definitely in mini kids and kids, there shouldn't be any adults in the room. Also, if there are any, the only adults that should be going up to that into the children's work corridor, so where the kids and mini kids rooms are and whatever, they should be either children's leaders or adults picking up children from the groups or dropping them off. So if you see an adult floating up there, you need to kind of send them back down. That's just a really simple way of us being quite transparent and keeping the kids safe, because we'll be, obviously if you don't know the adults, then you could always ask them, like, who are you here to see or to get, but just try and make sure that there aren't unknown adults up in that part of church, because that just helps us to ensure their safety, the kids' safety. So that's kind of like the broad, universal for everybody practicalities. So in terms of thinking about how to create a safe environment for the kids that we have at church, we need to think really proactively about how to do that. We all have the same desire for children to be safe and well looked after and happy and not to commit to any harm, but we do have to think proactively about how we do that at church. And I always think that there are 3 things that will help us to do that. So all of our actions, whatever we do, should be age appropriate, they should be proportionate, and they should be transparent. And so what I mean by that is, we need to think, when we're responding to something or interacting with a child, we need to be doing that in a way that is age appropriate. So what you do to look after a 3-year-old is not what you do to look after a 10-year-old. So is it age appropriate? Is it proportionate? Does it match the situation that you're in? And also, is it transparent? You need, as children's leaders, to be speaking to parents so that they know what's gone on in the children's session. The reason for that is kids come out with all sorts of stuff. I've had a conversation in kids where we decorated gingerbread biscuits, and there was a whole description of why this gingerbread is a gingerbread woman, not a man, and then discussing physically why it's a woman, not a man. And you just think, imagine if they go home at lunchtime and they're going, oh, we talked about men's parts and women, girls' parts, or whatever it might be. And so just little conversations can stop parents being alarmed and just helps you to be transparent. And so it's just really good to always be speaking to parents, and letting them know how kids have been or whatever else. So think all the way through this, we're going to think what is proportionate, age appropriate and transparent in our actions. So something that we ask all of our children's leaders is that nobody is one-to-one with a child. So we don't want anyone to be one-to-one. That is, if you have, just thinking, if a child needs the toilet and they need someone to take them, you might need to have 2 leaders to go with them to the toilet. You can bring another leader along, but in this situation, it's a really good example of when we think what's proportionate and age appropriate, because a 7-year-old can go to the toilet on their own. Unless you've been told otherwise, there's no reason why they will go to the toilet on their own at school. So you might not need to leave the room. You might want to stand in the doorway to make sure they go into the right toilets, of course. But age appropriate wise, you don't need to be helping them on the toilet like you might need to if they are in the TOTS group and they've only just learned how to go to the toilet. So that's an age appropriate situation of, do they need my help? Well, no, they're old enough, they'll go to the toilet on their own in school. Okay, they can go, and I'll just make sure that they walk into the right door and make sure that they come back in. But in TOTS, obviously, that is different, because you'll have a lot of children who are going through the joys of potty training. So I would suggest always, if a child needs a toilet in TOTS, that when the last time I did TOTS, if you said, does anyone else need the toilet? Every child suddenly needs the toilet. And so you can do like a little group expedition is one way to sort of try and cover that. Obviously, the one-to-one does cover you for if 2 leaders step out of the room. I would suggest trying to have 1 leader in the toilet, 1 leader sort of in the middle of the toilet and the children's room, so that they can see both in both situations. And then you've got the leader in the room, but with all the rest of the children if need be. That one's a bit of a logistical tricky one, but it just is. Then the transparency there in that situation with going to the toilet is telling the parents, oh, they needed the toilet, so they've gone. Now, just in terms of thinking about toileting, which is often an area that leaders sort of worry about, if you've got a child in mini kids, I guess, or even all kids, they are just in primary school still, so there is the possibility that they will get into a bit of a muddle. They might need help just getting back into their trousers or pulling up their tights, or they might one child in a kids group that I was in, she managed to get soap. She pumped so much soap onto her hands and then rubbed it into her hair. And basically it was just an absolute nightmare because they had to figure out how to sort it out. So, sometimes children, even when they're old enough to know what to do get into a muddle. In that situation, I would say to another leader, oh, so-and-so, so I guess, I can see Naomi, so let's say it's Etty, you just say, oh, if Esty says she needs some help in the toilet, you might, you know, find out what it is, or she just needs help because she can't button something up, and you say to Kate, oh Kate, I'm just gonna help Etty in the toilet. So Kate takes that as, right, I'm just gonna stand and keep an eye on Rebecca because she's helping a child in the toilet. So it's just really simple ways of like just communicating. Don't go into detail because who wants to know what trouble a child's got into in the toilet, but like the other leader just knowing how to step in and help out. So the other thing, I guess, is that if a child is a bit older, they might want their parent to come and help them because it might actually be less embarrassing and less awkward for everybody involved. And that's always an option, and one that is, if you have to go and get a child's parent, that's never a problem. And there's normally people in the corridor at church who can help if you don't know all the parents there. Yeah. So in terms of not being a one-to-one with a child and going to the toilet, hopefully that's sort of covered. Hopefully you're not all bored to tears at this point. The other things are restricting physical contact. So what does that mean for, we can't just say never touch a child because that would be ridiculous. Because how would a baby's leader or how would any of us never touch a child in our group? So this is when you're going to need some like group participation. So wake up if you've fallen asleep. So for babies, so babies leaders, just be thinking in your mind, what is age appropriate, proportionate to the babies group in terms of physical contact with the child? And if every group, if you're in babies, tots, mini kids, and kids, Y Connect, what would be that age appropriate and proportionate actions in terms of physical contact? But we will start with anyone that is a babies leader in terms of what is proportionate and age appropriate. And hopefully someone answers. Karen, go on.
I don't mind sharing. I think probably loads of stuff, like, so you need to pick them up if they're wanting to stand up a bit and they're not happy. Might need to give them a cuddle, might need to move them away from some danger or some stealing a toy off somebody else, or yeah, a lot of picking up and moving maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because they're babies. So the babies group at church, in case you don't know, is from, is it 6 months to 2 years old? So of course, that age group, you need to be that, you know, you have to move them away from the trampling toddlers that are in the room, or, you know, help to comfort them. You don't comfort a crying 8-month-old baby by saying, oh dear, I hope you'll be okay. Like, you know, you physically pick them up and you comfort them. So it's completely age appropriate and is proportionate to the situation. So what would be, I don't know, is it disproportionate? Whatever the opposite of proportionate is, what would that be like in babies? Shall I go for this
Maybe
one?
changing nappies.
Maybe.
We don't change nappies, do we?
Yes,
and
exactly.
Cuddling them because you fancy a cuddle, not because the child needs it or wants it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Kath. So yeah, changing nappies. We don't do any changing nappies in Christchurch Children's Work. So if they need a nappy changing, you go and get the parent, which I think is a real blessing to you guys, because like nappies are gross. But yeah, so no changing nappies. And yeah, in terms of if the child is just totally happy and is playing really happily, then it wouldn't be proportionate or that kind to the child to sort of take them for your own, wanting a nice cuddle with them. Of course, like, you know, it's just about, you know, you could, I guess it's that sort of using your own common sense, not disrupting them being in a nice activity or being perfectly happy just because you want a cuddle. And also then with that comes the transparency of saying to a parent when they come in, oh, we've had lots of nice cuddles this morning, or they've sat on my lap and whilst we were reading the story or singing the song. That's just, you know, that's nice for a parent to hear, or they've been well looked after, they've been happy, or yeah, we walked around for a long time because they were a little bit grizzly, or they kind of, if we put them down, they cried. So the parent just knows, oh, okay, they were well looked after. Maybe they were a bit upset at some point, but they were comforted. That's all proportionate to the situation. So what about if a child is in TOTS, which is aged 2 to 4? What would be proportionate and age appropriate in TOTS?
I answer?
Yes.
Sorry, my screen has just flicked to Liz, so I thought Liz was about to say something. I guess sitting them on your lap if they're upset. So if they're crying because their parents have left, we all sit around a table at the beginning and have raisins. So you might sit them on their lap to give them the raisins and encourage them to drink their squash. And then again, when we're sat on the mat, sometimes if they are upset, we might sit them on our laps on the mat.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, in TOTS, you don't comfort a toddler by just using words. Physical contact in that situation is appropriate because that is how children are comforted at that age. So yeah, popping them on your lap, saying, you know, reassuring them through that you're there, they've not been abandoned by the parents really, and just comforting them. I guess that can include if you've got 101 bowls of raisins to put out whilst you've got a child that's screaming, picking them up so that you can, you know, get on and do the practical jobs, that would be fine as well. So what would be disproportionate in a TOTS session in terms of physical contact?
It is a tricky one, isn't it? Because in TOTS, we do have permission to bring them to the toilet. So it is always a funny time, that, because although one person stands at the door and one person goes in with them, as you said at the start, it's the most important thing that there's a few go together, isn't there? So it's almost that safety in numbers, being very open about, you know, that at that age they will need help often to sit up in the toilet or to get off or to pull their pants up. And I think, I know I've heard all the people in our team, they'll often ask first, you know, can you do it by yourself? Asking those questions first before you kind of jump in just to do it for them and things like that. It's quite helpful.
No, yeah, and encouraging, a lot of encouragement of, oh no, you're a big girl, you can do that yourself, can't you? So that kind of affirming, but please just get on and wipe yourself. But yeah, no, absolutely, this is the most difficult age in terms of that personal care. Like, they are going to need support. Now on the children's forms, the parents fill in a form before any child goes into the group, and so you need to double check that it says that they can be taken to the toilet or not, because some parents might say, no, I want to do all of that myself. Another just practical thing in terms of that would be to encourage every parent of a TOTS age child to take them before the session, which I know is not a fail-safe, like, you know, kids randomly need the toilet at any moment, don't they? So, but it's, you know, yeah, it is tricky, but I guess it is just that trying to restrict the trying to restrict as much as possible how much you have to help them in their personal care. And then transparency is telling the parents if you've had to do that, so that the parents know, well, so and so needed the toilet, so they took them, but they refused to wipe their own bum, so Jeanette did it, or whoever did it. And so they know the exact situation, nothing's been hidden, it doesn't ever come across like you've done something for their child without telling them. And it's just, you know, can reassure parents, I think is really important. Kate, is
Sorry,
your
can I
hand
just
up?
ask? Yes, it was. Sorry. If a child, because I know quite a lot of the tots quite well, if the child came to sit on my lap, or a child came to sit on anyone's lap, is that kind of okay, or should we kind of be like, no, you need to come and sit on the floor next to me, or how? What's that kind of? What do you want us to do with that?
I mean, I would say that. I mean, and anyone jump in if you've got thoughts here, but I'd say, you know, try and put them next to you and say, oh no, I'd like to sit next to you, please. I like to have my legs free. And then, you know, sometimes it's like if you give them a little side cuddle so they know you've not like rejected them, but it just makes it just try and encourage them to sit next to you is always better. It also just means that you can really quickly respond if you need to any other child in the group, because if you've got a kid on your lap, you have to move them before you go off and, you know, save the child that's decided to pull over all the toys or whatever it might be. But again, it's transparency as well. If the child is becoming really distressed because they want to sit on your lap, well, you know, is it worth it being, you know, forcibly saying no? I'd say definitely encourage them as firmly as possible, but if needed, you know, tell the parents afterwards, oh, they wouldn't sit anywhere else apart from my lap, and maybe chat to the parents about if they can say, oh, next week can you ask them not to do that, might be a way forward. I think just in terms of that, some children with, especially depending on their age, if they're old enough, which some of the kids in TOTS would be, and certainly mini kids and kids, a lot of children at Christchurch and in general are very tactile. So if they know you, they probably will want to give you cuddles or hugs or whatever. I have just taken to saying in children's groups, we don't do that. So just it's not a rejection of them, it just makes that area a space where they're not, you know, you're not having overly like too much physical contact with children. Okay, let's go on and do mini kids. So mini kids, what would be age appropriate and proportionate for physical contact? I'll pick on people and say, Jonathan, you can answer.
You know me. Don't know, because it's kind of a step up from TOTS, isn't it? So I guess we would sit around a table. We wouldn't necessarily kind of, you know, get them to sit on our knees or things like that. Although I guess the younger ones have just come up from TOTS, that might be a little bit more appropriate to kind of, you know, comfort them in a kind of, you know, side hug way. I'm not sure. I'm hoping other people might be able to jump in. What are the other mini?
Well, pretty much in mini kids. So they toilet themselves. Sort of they're all school age up, so they're used to doing that and being able to sort themselves out. Reception age might need still a little bit of help because that's still a year which they learn to wipe and toilet properly. So that's just to be aware of that. But again, I think that transparency, like you said, Rebecca, that's just good to have that transparency with parents that all so-and-so needed help in the, you know, and or whatever. And but they should learn that quite quickly. But yeah, I think Kath said it at the start, that sort of, you don't go looking for attention from the kids. You, oh, come and cuddle me, or come and do this, or whatever. So it's all appropriate in line with the kids. Or even, to be honest, sometimes kids try and want lots of affection from leaders, and I think it's the leader's responsibility as well to be like, oh, okay, that's enough, you know, let's sit down and let's do this, and sort of lay out the boundaries as well, so that that's nice and clear for them and they don't form inappropriate bonds or
So I'm just aware of time because I'm like running over because I talk too much. But so yes, absolutely, Emma. So I think if a child who is in infant school, so you know, from reception to year 2, if they hurt themselves or they're upset or whatever, well, that's still an age where they don't necessarily need to be picked up or, you know, held or have them sat on your lap, but you might want to give them a little cuddle, a little side cuddle. You might, you know, you can reassure them that you're there. Obviously, some question in the chat was, what about if they fall? Absolutely pick them up and comfort them. If a child gets hurt, you know, how it would be cruel to not comfort them. Definitely, that is completely age appropriate and proportionate for a child in both kids and mini kids. I would say if sometimes reception in year 1, 2 children will try and sit on your lap because they want to be near you and they are tactile generally at that age. That's where I'd say definitely they should be sat next to you at that point. They don't need to be sat on your lap. But say you can't sit on my lap, but you can sit next to me and, you know, and help them in that way. And again, transparency. If you have to help them in the toilet, tell the parents. Like we said before, if you know, if you need to do something, tell the parents, just so that it's completely transparent. And whizzing through in kids, what would be appropriate and proportionate for kids group?
Maybe a high five.
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe a high five or a fist bump.
Yeah.
I imagine there could be a situation where you might need to or it'd be good to get your advice on this. If there was a situation where a child was either going to hurt themselves or another child, you might need to restrain them in some way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so those sort of fun things like fist bumps, high fives, you know, whatever it might be, like really good ways of doing it. So making a physical connection with the child without it being intense or weird or inappropriate. If a child is misbehaving and is possibly or probably going to hurt another child, I would say always obviously try and intercept before that happens so it doesn't. So you know, I have had situations where I've said, you can sit there or you can do that, but if I think you're going to hurt someone, you will have to move. So you kind of, that's where getting to know the children, predicting what they're going to do, and then physically removing them from the situation. I also have been in groups where a child has just gone for another child essentially, or like, you know, being really wound up, and I have had to lift them and move them out of that situation. Again, that's proportionate, isn't it? Because we don't run a group where we want children to be hurt or to be hurting other kids, but it is really important in those situations to bring the parent into that. So, you know, move them out of the situation so that everyone, including the angry child, is safe. So you move them to another part of the room or into the corridor if necessary. And then depending on whether they're calming down, either in that moment or at the end of the session, bring the parent in and tell the parent with the child what's happened so that everything is explained. If it looks like the child is going absolutely mental and there's no way that you can hold him or her in a manner which isn't, you know, excessive, I wouldn't want you to like body tackle a child. And so if it's like that, you just go and get the parent straight away. If it's a case of picking up, moving and plonking down somewhere else, and that's the quickest and safest way to protect everyone in the room, then yes, definitely do that. Just make sure you tell the parent. Yeah. Does that make sense in terms of, and is that I also would just say that when you're in the groups, probably some of you will be new to the children's groups, you will quickly get to know the children who are more tactile and will want to sit on your lap, or who are more likely to, you know, get angry and try and hit another child, or the child that will get wound up easily. Now, I would say at the beginning of the sessions, when you meet as a team before the session, discuss these children and say, right, who's going to keep a close eye on so and so that you can intercept anything like that before it happens. That's often the kindest and the easiest way to do it. So it's not every leader jumping in with their own ideas of how to manage something, but one leader at the beginning of the session who says, I will keep an eye on this child so that that doesn't escalate, nothing escalates, or, you know, I will keep an eye to make sure that so and so is happy without needing to, like, you know, plonk herself down on an adult's lap or whatever it is. So yeah, talk about the children in the group. That's not a wrong thing to do, that's completely fine. Okay, I'm going to move on. Why Connect? We will discuss yours at some point. At some point I'll figure it out with Sarah. So in terms of what do you do if a child says something that makes you worried? So in these situations, it's often what people are most afraid of when it comes to safeguarding. So what do we do if a child says something? So we need to think about the context. So are you telling the story in the kids group and a child mentions something in a question, mention something in an answer to something you've asked? So in that situation, it might be appropriate to talk to them afterwards and say, oh, you said this, so repeat what they said and then see if they want to tell you more. If you feel unable to do that, then you can always go to the safeguarding officer and talk to them about something you have heard that you think is concerning. But if a child asks to speak to you and they want to tell you something, then we need to remember that we don't keep promises. We do keep promises. We don't keep secrets. We don't make promises. We don't investigate a situation. And we remember that a child is always being brave. So if a child comes to asks to speak to you and they say, can I tell you something, but you can't tell anyone else? Well, the answer is, you can tell me anything, but I can't promise to keep it a secret, because what if it's something that might hurt you or something that means you're not safe? I have said this to children and then they've laughed and told me like the most ridiculous thing ever. And I've also said it to children and they've said, okay, because often if a child has worked up the guts to tell you something, even if you say, I can't promise to keep it a secret, that often doesn't put children off. And a fear that like a lot of people have is saying, I can't keep it a secret, that a child won't tell you. But often a child will tell you, and this is where we trust God's providence, because if a child wants to tell you something, then, you know, it will come out in God's timing and in God's way. So if they don't tell us in that moment, don't panic, maybe make a note of it or tell a safeguarding officer. But it's better that you've told them you won't keep it a secret and then they see that you're telling the truth than to do it differently. So if they tell you something, often our natural instinct would be to ask them more questions. So when did that happen, or how did that happen? Now, we're not going to do that if a child says something to us. It's important not to do that. We're not there to investigate. There are professionals who investigate these situations, and these are not children's leaders at Christchurch. So what we do is we can say things that are affirming. So we could say, oh, I'm so pleased that you've told me. That was really brave to tell me. Is there anything else you want to tell me now? So we've not asked any investigative questions. We're not digging into anything. We're not looking for more details, but we're checking that they have told us everything that they want to tell us. Another thing could be that they want to that you repeat back what they've said, because sometimes that means that they'll add more details in if there are. So you could say, so you've told me that sometimes you feel scared at home. And then you pause, because what happens in a pause, generally the other person in the conversation will fill it. And so they might tell you more at that point. But at the point that it's clear they're not going to tell you anything else, it's really good to say, I'm so pleased that you've told me this, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you, or thank you for telling me this, you're so brave. So affirming that they've made a really good decision in talking to you. Now, I think it's really important to remember that whatever a child tells you, we have to remember that they're being very brave, because even if it feels very trivial to us what they're saying to us, and it turns out it's not a safeguarding thing, well, we want children to know that they can come and talk to us. We're trusted adults in their lives. We're not people that's going to lie to them. And so if they want to come and tell us that something made them sad at school, that's just as brave as telling us that something bad is happening somewhere else, or at home, or with whoever. And then after that, so we don't make promises, we don't keep secrets, we don't investigate, we remember a child's being brave, and then we think, flipping heck, where are the safeguarding officers? I need to go and tell them. And that's the next thing that you need to do. And then the safeguarding officers have the joy of taking over and figuring out what to do with that information. So after a child tells you something, you would need to write it down, date it and sign it. There are incident forms, I think in all of the children's boxes, definitely in the transport box, that any of the elders or Jack or a safeguarding officer can tell you where they are. And you can write it all on that. And I would just write it word for word. This is what they've said. This is where I was. Sign and date it so you know where it is, and hand it in to the safeguarding officer. Now, another thing to remember is that if a child has told you a safeguarding concern, it is private. It's not something to be shared amongst the whole children's team or amongst your friends or anyone else. It's to be shared with the safeguarding officer. So if you find Kath on the day, it's to be shared with Kath. And then if there are other leaders that were present at that time, then it's to be, you can talk about it with them. These are, safeguarding issues are personal, they're people's private lives, and they're stuff that needs to be discussed in the proper fashion. And so it is really important that you don't share kids' information around and about the place. But obviously it can be really distressing, and that isn't to be ignored. It's okay for you if a child says something to you that makes you worried. It's perfectly okay and normal and appropriate for you to feel worried or distressed or upset. And in those situations, we can pray. And it's so good that we have a God who we can pray to, and who we can bring all of these things that often we don't understand or that feel hard. And so, pray with the safeguarding officers, pray with your children's team, pray for the children, and bring it to God, and talk about it with the safeguarding officers. They've all been chosen for a reason. They're all wise and mature and have dealt with safeguarding stuff, or children or whatever. So talk about it and talk about how you're feeling. So just coming towards an end, but other things that you might notice that you want to take a note of would be a child with unusual bruising. So perhaps they've got a bruise on their ear, or perhaps they're wearing shorts and they've got bruises quite high up on their legs, or they've got a lot of bruises that just the explanation makes no sense. If you see a child with a bruise, you can say, oh, that's a big bruise. And they might say, oh, I fell over. Or you could say to a parent, oh, I noticed that your little one's got a big bruise, and see what they say. If you feel that the explanation is inconsistent with what you're seeing, or something just feels wrong about it, again, go to the safeguarding officers and chat to them about it. Again, make a note of the day and where the bruise was, and what you think, like where the bruise was and what the explanation you were given is. But just make a note of that and take it to the safeguarding officers. You might have a child in your group that does a drawing that you feel is inappropriate. So you could ask the child in that situation, oh, you've drawn a picture, can you tell me what's in the picture? And we've all experienced the kid that brings you a picture and they clearly think it's a work of art and you have no idea what it is. So that's not an unusual question for a child, or what have you drawn? And then again, make a note. If you think, oh, that's really weird, why have they drawn that really odd picture? For example, just to like, it would, you know, what would be inappropriate? They might have drawn something that is sexualized. Well, that would be inappropriate for any child in, you know, from tots through to, well, babies, but I doubt they're drawing, but like, you know, up through to mini kids, and even some of the Y Connect kids, you know, sometimes kids just doodle what they're thinking in their heads. And so keep an eye on it. If you think it's inappropriate, keep the if you think it's inappropriate, keep the picture, ask if you can keep a picture of it, so you can share it with a safeguarding officer. If they don't want you to have the picture, one thing that you could do, again, it would depend if the child let you, is you could say, oh, it's a really interesting picture. Don't say it's a good picture, but a really interesting picture. Can I take a photo? And then give the photo to a safeguarding officer. The other thing would be inappropriate language from a child. Now, this isn't a child in school saying a swear word. I've had multiple kids swear in kids sessions because they don't know what the word means, and they've heard it on the playground. And in those situations, we just go, oh no, we don't use that word. We tell the parent. But if their language is really inappropriate, for example, if you've got a child who reels off a bunch of swear words in context, which makes sense, so they're angry and the language that comes out of their mouth makes complete sense for the situation, well, we have to be thinking, where are they learning that language, and why are they using it? Why are they reeling it off like that? Again, I'd say take that to the safeguarding officers, because probably in that situation we need to just check what's going on at home. If a child in tots or in baby starts swearing, that's always inappropriate, because they're only hearing that at home, aren't they? So we need to just double check that things are okay, really, don't we? And we need to make sure that they're not being exposed to stuff they shouldn't be. Again, take that to the safeguarding officers. We've got a question about asking a parent. So is it not investigating if you ask a parent how a child got a bruise? I would say in that case, it's not. When the investigating is for when a child makes a disclosure. So if a child comes to you and says, I want to tell you things, and then they share something massive, that's when we don't investigate the situation. If we see a child with bruising, then it's perfectly normal inquiry to make. Like, I would ask if if a child comes in with any sort of injury, you would say, oh, how did that happen? Now, if you start going, oh, that doesn't quite make sense because that's different from what they said, or oh, that doesn't make sense because if you fell over, how would you get a bruise in that way? That is investigating it, and it's challenging it, which is again not our job. But I would say, the only way to know if a bruise if an explanation is not consistent, is to ask them, how did it happen? Just not to dig into it. So just that sort of it's a normal question, how did they get that bruise? If a child comes with a bruise on their ear, I would say just take that straight to the safeguarding officer, because a bruise on an ear, it's very hard to bruise an ear. Or if you think if you feel really uncomfortable, take that to the safeguarding officer. If it isn't something that is, you're feeling like, you're just thinking this is a bit weird, why have they got so many bruises, or they're saying stuff, then if you want to, take it to a safeguarding officer and let them manage it. But if you feel like it would be appropriate to say, oh, how did they get that bruise, then do that. I'd say that was fine. Yeah, so basically, in answer to everything, take it to the safeguarding officers. So you're welcome Kath and Chris and Jack, and you know, take it to the safeguarding officers and pray about it with them in the moment. Pray about it as you fill the forms in. If you need to, pray about it as you record stuff. Just pray, because I do just think, and like lots of you will know, I've worked in safeguarding for a long time, and I do just think the only way often with safeguarding issues that we can manage the trickiness and all of that with everything, it is by bringing it to God, because it raises so many questions. And so just keep praying. Yes, we'll do some questions. Jonathan and Emma, I'm so sorry I've run over time so much, but in terms of mobile phones, we do have a policy about it. Now, can I remember what it is? No, at this moment, but Sarah might be able to.
Can I just jump in, Rebecca? The only reason I ask is because in TOTS in particular, you know, we like to play music, and very often, you know, I have played it off my phone, and I've always said to the other, you know, workers, I'm just taking my phone out, you know, I'm going to play some music off it. I think one of the other
right.
Okay, I do it too, but I'm very conscious of, because I know in my head in early years is always like, oh, we never have our mobile phones out when the children are there. So I just want to double check, are we allowed to do that or not?
Oh no, yeah, that was I have never thought about that. I would say that as Kath, you might want to step in as someone that is a safeguarding officer now, but I feel like as long as you're saying, oh, I'm just taking my phone out to play music, and then it's going, you're not on it, you're just pressing play and putting it to the side, I would say that was fine. And, you know, you're being transparent to the other leaders in the room by saying, yes, I'm doing this, but you're not, obviously, we do not take photos of children in the children's group, so you shouldn't have your phones out, because there's a risk there, I guess, and you shouldn't be on your phones all the time, because your energy and focus should be on the kids. But I don't have a problem with that. Kath?
Yeah, I think, Jeanette, that's a really good idea. I mean, for me in work, and I know where you're coming from, Jeanette, we would never have our phones out in front of children at all, because you're just putting yourself in such a vulnerable position. And it's a generational thing. Like, I mean, I can put my phone in my bag and not look at it for 2 weeks, whereas younger people might have their phone in their hand constantly. So I just think what Rebecca said, if you're in doing that work is what you're doing, your phone doesn't come into it really, so keep it out of the way and you're keeping yourself safe. But if you're putting music on, we've done that in babies as well, and we're saying to each other, look, I'm just going to put this music on, then yeah, you're being transparent. So, but it is a dangerous device to have out all the time, I would say. So I'll be an old person and say, put your phone away.
Can I ask a question? Oh, sorry. I don't know who was speaking there, I couldn't see, but I was just going to ask on that, taking pictures, videos, whatever, because it is a bit of definitely not in groups, isn't it? So how does it work then, being part of a church family, if you're doing stuff? I was just wondering if any of the safeguarding officers might have any wisdom on that, or Rebecca. Is it best just not to, in general, not to take photos full stop, particularly as leaders of other people's kids?
I think there's not really a time that it's appropriate to take photos. If we want to take photos to evidence what's happened in the groups, then we should be letting the parents know that that's going to happen. Obviously, they do sign permission on the children's forms that they hand in, but I just feel like that we don't want to distract from what we're doing in the kids' work, which is to teach children about Christ and from the Bible. So there is, you know, phones are a distraction, so not having them out is the best policy. And then
can I just chip in to agree with Rebecca there? I know this might make me a bit paranoid, but I've always been really uncomfortable with people taking pictures of my kids, and so all parents they have to sign whether or not they want their children to be shown in Christchurch stuff or in public stuff, and I've always signed that I didn't want mine in public stuff. So even things like when people have taken pictures of baptisms and then they've put it on Instagram and you can see the kids that are there, that's always made me a little bit edgy, just because I don't put many pictures of my kids on social media. So I would say I can't think of any situation in which somebody should just be ad hoc taking pictures of kids in the group. I think it would only happen if it had been, or even in church, personally, I think it should only happen if it had been agreed by the people, like, you know, by the admin team, that was going to happen and that somebody had been allocated to do it.
So just to jump in on that one. So as everyone said, forms are filled in. All photos should be centrally organised. So we're quite fussy about when and where. So basically, if it's not involving me, Emma, Rusty, or another safeguarding officer, then generally it's a no-no.
Great, thank you. We've just got, there are a couple of questions. Hang on. So in terms of texting a parent to ask them to come out of the service, I'd say again, because we're not having phones out in the session, then, you know, it's best not to text a parent. We did do it a little bit in COVID to limit the amount of people walking in and out of the hall. There's always people in the corridor at CFS, because there has to be. So if it's a case of it's going to be very difficult for you to walk down, you should be able to shout down to one of those people and say, can you go and get Eden's mum or whoever to come and get the children, because they can help. But yeah, I think generally we try and just limit as much of phones as possible. In terms of, say, Hazel and Neo said, what is the correct way to respond to the child once the situation has been passed on to the safeguarding officer and the child wants to tell you more on another week? So one of the ways that we're transparent is with children. So the children would be told that the information is being shared with the safeguarding officer. So a safeguarding officer would want to speak to the kids in all likelihood, because, you know, and they would include you in that if it's appropriate. So if they want to share more information with you, that's absolutely fine. You do what you did the week before. You say, you know, it's the same thing of, we're not investigating, we're not asking them to tell us more. If they say, can I tell you, can I talk to you about that? You could, can I talk to you about what I told you last week? You could say, yeah, if you want to talk to me, that's fine. And then you sit with the child, obviously, and they talk to you about it. And you say, well, can you remember we had to go and talk to Jack last week about this because we want to make sure you're safe. Well, I'm going to do that again. So you're being transparent. Again, no investigating questions. You're not leading them into telling you anything. It's all completely their choice coming from you. But you're also, they know that that information isn't only for you because you've told them already, this isn't a secret. We have to share this information. So fab question, but I'd say just do exactly what you did last week if that happens. And then again, just make sure you make a note of the new information shared. Okay, that's for Y-Connect. Sorry, I'm just looking. And then there is a question about, when are we allowed to put stuff away into the kids' bathroom? As in a safeguarding way, when there's no children in there at all. So don't let children into the bathroom if you're putting stuff into the cupboard. If it was a question of when is that allowed to happen, I'd say after the kids session, when the kids are down in the hall with their parents, and as soon as a kid is signed out of mini kids or babies or tots or whatever, they are back to being the parent's responsibility. But generally, don't go in there if there's another child in there. And if a child tries to walk in, send them right out again very quickly, so that you're not caught in a situation with yourself in a toilet with a child. Yeah, but fab question. Any other questions?
I suppose one thing that's really difficult at church is the fact that we know so many people, and a child might come to you and you know their parents and you're friends with the parents. And I think that's the time, I don't know, it's not really a question, I suppose it's just something to think about, isn't it? That sometimes a child might disclose something to you when you know their parents, and you've got to think about I've got to go to the safeguarding officer now and not to that parent. I suppose when we do training, I don't know if Jeanette said this or anybody's a teacher. I remember hearing about a child who lost weight, was really poorly, kept on having doctor's appointments, had bruises, and eventually that child died. And everybody, when we listened to it in safeguarding, we were like, goodness gracious me, how did the school not pick up on any of that? And it was because the mum was a teaching assistant in the school and had lots of answers ready for what was going on. And I don't know, it just always sticks in my head, something like that. And I just think in church, you're so vulnerable in so many ways. Again, like Kate was saying, where kids know you, you know, what's my first response when I see a small child? I want to pick it up, give it a hug, you know, it's just because you know the kids so well. And it's just, it's like in school, I have loads of kids who go to Bridge or come to our church or go to Egbert. And I know them really well. And I've known them since they were babies, changed their nappies. And yet in school, I've got to completely have a different role altogether. And I think it's just being mindful of all of those things, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And I think that is where where there's a few things that we can be comforted by. So remembering that it's not our job to investigate anything. So a child might say something to us and we think, what the heck, I know the parents. No way. It's not our job to decide. It's not that's not what we do as children's leaders in church. We take it to the safeguarding officers because their job is to then take it to whoever it needs to go to. So I think you're absolutely right. It is difficult because they might be talking about someone. Well, in all likelihood, they would be talking about someone that you know. And that's where we have to remember it's not my job to decide if this is true or false. I just take the information that I am told. And in my head, I can think whatever. But what my job is to take the information and share it with the appropriate people. And whilst that might sound quite cold for me, it is, you know, be comforted by that because we're not passing judgment on parents and we're not passing judgment on what children are telling us. We're not saying, I believe this or I don't believe this, or there's, you know, they're such lovely people, how can they do this? Or they're such vile people, how can they do this? Well, those thoughts don't impact the actions that we have to do. And if somebody challenges what we have to do, then we can say with all honesty and, you know, truth, well, that's what we have to do. I had no choice but to share this information. And so it is difficult, but we aren't here as investigators. That's not anybody's role as children's leaders. Our role is to take information that we are given or that we observe and share it with the appropriate people, which for you guys is the safeguarding officers. For the safeguarding officers is, you know, the next step of whatever that might be. But yeah, so it is tricky, and that's another area that it's worth talking to the safeguarding officers about. If you feel that that's something you're really struggling with, then talk to them about it and say, I'm really finding this hard. But yeah, no, that's a really helpful reminder because it's something that we need to watch out for. Okay, we are over time.
No, that is great. Rebecca, you don't need to apologise. That was really, really great. Thank you so much. We all appreciate you taking your time to do all that. I know that you're about to jet off to America, so we're really grateful. Where are you right now? Are you back with your parents?
I'm with my parents.
Yeah, great. Is there a dog with you?
Sorry?
Was there a dog barking in the background?
Yeah, well, so sadly, it wasn't the dog barking in the background because the dog's really poorly, but the dog is somewhere. I'm surprised the cat hasn't come in. I'm surprised my mother hasn't come in, you know, so you're lucky it's not been super busy. But
no, we are really grateful. If we were in a room, we would obviously give you a massive round of applause. We can't do that on Zoom, but thank you so much. And thank you also to the safeguarding. Oh, we're all clapping. There we go, silent applause. We're also obviously really grateful for the safeguarding officers. Thank you, Kath and Jack and Chris. for doing the jobs. There was one question I think that was just slightly overlooked, which was a first aid officer. Do we know anything? First aid. Do we have one?
Was that about if a child falls over?
Yeah.
We do have first aid officers at church. Jack should know who they are.
Great question. We've got a couple of people who are first aid at work trained. I will reissue a list out to everyone because off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. If any of you are first aid at work trained.
Sarah Oliver's first aid trained and she's a nurse. Just saying.
I think.
There we go.
It definitely needs to be someone who is like always in at church though, so that would have to be something that is, do you know what, as in, yeah.
I'll come back to everyone.
Sarah might not always be at church, so yeah,
we will communicate who the first aid officers are.
Because Sarah's looking like she wants to shoot me or something.
We're also really grateful for all of you. Thank you so much for being part of the kids team this year. We are so grateful for that. We're also grateful for the Lord, that the Lord uses people like us to do his ministry, to teach kids the gospel. And of course, we pray on for kids to come and know Jesus. And of course, this safeguarding is really important. As part of that, we want them to be safe, and for us to be safe doing the work we do. So thanks very much. We've not had time for breakout groups, which is absolutely fine. What I suggest we do, we've got 4 minutes left. Would 3 people mind praying for the things we've discussed tonight, and then we will close. So yeah, if 3 or 4 people could pray, that'd be great.
Father, thank you so much for this training tonight, and we know how important keeping these children safe in our church family. And we thank you for Rebecca, Lord, to give us all this wisdom and remind us of how important safeguarding is to each and every person involved in the children's work in Christchurch, Lord. And we just ask for your protection over our ministry, protection over everything that we do, and that you would keep the children safe and the workers safe too, Lord. And we do pray if there is any children in our midst, Lord, who may be suffering some form of abuse, Lord, that you would give us eyes to see it, Lord, and help us to be wise with the information that we have, that we would be able to help those children and that they wouldn't come to any harm or any more harm, Lord. And it's an awful thing to think about, Father, but we do commit it into your perfect hands, and we trust you with this. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Father, I pray that we would all be faithful and diligent in our responsibilities in this, and not to kind of think it doesn't matter or isn't important, but Lord, we would just recognize that the value, just the significance of this, and as part of our loving and caring for our children and young people, we want to do that in a way that keeps them safe and also keeps us safe, and kind of just really respects them and their families, and just does this really well. So please help us to be faithful, Father. Help us to not feel overwhelmed where sometimes it can feel really daunting, but to really trust you and to know your hand and your work and your sovereignty in the midst of this, Lord Jesus. But we pray that you give us real just eyes and wisdom to kind of just really see and react and respond responsibly, and just with love, and just with real wisdom. Amen.
Amen.
Lord, we thank you so much that you are a good God. You're a God who is sovereign and is just. We thank you for all the children and young people in our church, and we do pray that you would protect them and keep them safe. And pray that over the next year for these children's leaders, pray that you would help them to be teaching your word to the kids faithfully and truthfully, and pray that you would help them to create this environment that we were discussing, one which is safe and allows children to feel safe. Pray that you would give these children's leaders here tonight all that they need, all the resources and energy, creativity, and all the wisdom that they need if any safeguarding concerns arise. Lord, we thank you that in the midst of suffering and chaos, you are still good and God and in control. And just pray that as we've thought about a lot of stuff tonight that is worrying or concerning and scary, we thank you for who you are, and just pray that if anything does arise over the next year, that you would help us to manage that in a way that is honouring to you and glorifying to you, as we seek to love all the children and manage that in a good way. But we pray ultimately, Lord, that nothing would happen. We long for our kids to be safe and to be protected from harm. Pray that you'd help us to do that well in our roles. We pray for all the parents at church and the carers and the people who watch over and look after kids. We just pray that you would help them to parent and care for their children in a way that is safe and positive. And Lord, we just pray that children would come to know you, as Jonathan said, the vision is that kids would come to love you and know you all their lives. And we pray that as we create this safe atmosphere and environment, as we teach from your word, we just pray that children would come to know you and love you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everyone. There's two last things. One is, please put your name in the chat, because we need to take a register of who's come. Easiest thing is probably just everyone write their names. Whoever's in your room, write everyone's name in the chat. And Jack wants to mention something about registers.
Yes, sorry, one last thing. They have horror stories of other churches where people make a claim and say something happened to me 5 years ago last Sunday, and they haven't got the registers. All our registers get electronically put onto Church Suite, but that doesn't help us unless you guys fill in the registers. So every week, if a kid comes in late, stick them on. If your leader or another leader comes in, stick all their names on that sheet. And if you can just make sure they all go back into the transport box. If you're not sure what the transport box is, it's the box in the hall mentioned, labeled transport box. Any staff member will find it for you, but it's really important we get that back every week. Any problems with registers, give us a shout. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jack. That's it. Feel free to log off. I'd suggest that, well, I'll get in touch with the coordinators of each group, and they will probably get in touch with you about having a little catch up and talk through your own individual groups. But until then, I hope you have a lovely rest of the evening. Do you want to say anything, Emma?
No, it's nice to see you all.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.